Hey, welcome. We're back. We're doing first basements today. Known power position, but we're going to talk about some guys who don't have power, but that's on me. But first, we're going to start off with Stephan Strasburg is officially retired from baseball. He was the number one draft pick for the Nationals. He was probably the biggest pitching prospect, maybe in draft history. His first game was amazing. It was something like, I believe, 7 innings, 11 strikeouts. He's just never been healthy. He's it's a great loss for baseball, or a sad loss for baseball, but I feel like it was a long time coming. He has not played. I don't think he's pitched more than like 5 games in a season in 3 or 4 seasons at this point. I don't know if you guys have anything to say on Strasburg, any memories of him, but dude was a monster.
Yeah, I remember watching his debut and just thinking, like this is going to be like a top 10 all-time pitcher. So really the way his career went, it's really too bad, but happy retirement to him.
I guess the question that I want to ask y'all is, did he do enough for the Hall of Fame?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. Would he have, though, if he'd stayed healthy?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I look at it, I'm going to bring up Ohtani because you always see me go back, and God rest my soul today, guys. Sorry, we are recording the day after Ohtani announces a partial tear.
Another bad news.
Trout goes on the IL as well, which is why you're going to hear me talk about my boy later. But, it's an age-old debate. Like, I believe Ohtani is the greatest baseball player of all time. He's not going to have the best career of all time. Strasburg could be one of the better pitchers of all time. He just won't have that career to get into Cooperstown. He won't have that career to where, like, my kids will never know who he is for the most part. It's not even – I don't think it's a good enough career for him to be talked about beyond he was one of the most hyped prospects. His rookie season was amazing, at least strikeout-wise. His first game ever was phenomenal. Outside of that, I don't think he's going to get the love that he deserves at all.
Yeah, and he's obviously an entirely different reason, but it gives me the same vibes as, as a Braves fan, I saw a lot of Jose Fernandez, and he used to kick our ass. And I remember watching him one game and being like, this guy could be, like top 25 all time. And, obviously what he happened a little different, but same thing with Strasburg. I mean, it just sucks to see a talent like that kind of get derailed.
Yeah.
He's an interesting case because he wasn't your typical, Brian Taylor, was it David Clyde, just guys who just flamed out. And he had success at the major league level for over a decade, but it was just marred by injuries.
Big injuries, too. It wasn't just like, oh, I have a blister, I'm going on the IL. It was long stints, came back, first game, injured, long stint. Is he a Hall of Famer? No. Is he Hall of Fame talent? Yes.
I think that's a great way of putting it. I mean, he had, I pulled it up real quick, he had 36.6 WAR. I mean, that's good, but it's not Hall of Fame worthy. But his peak, he had almost a 6 WAR season and 5.6. I mean, say what you want about WAR, but it at least gets the conversation rolling. And you can kind of paint a little bit of a picture on just how talented he was.
He was great. He was a great pitcher. I wouldn't even, like, it reminds me if you want to go another sport, like Grant Hill.
Yeah.
You got a guy who's just could have been a dominant Hall of Famer. Realistically, could have been a top 20 all-time player even with Hill and Strasburg. And it's going to be we'll never know. It's going to be, you're going to get the Washington National fans that are going to be debating, oh, he was one of the greatest pitchers of all time, but you can't really make that argument. But I do think talent-wise, he could be one of the greatest pitchers of all time. Like I'd say about Ohtani, maybe the greatest baseball athlete of all time. Probably won't go down as the greatest career because with this news, I don't think his longevity is to do both for 15 years, obviously. But that's why I view Strasburg. It's a special talent that did not get enough innings in.
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm wearing my hat front side. It's the only LA hat I have.
I love it.
I'm doing it in solidarity.
Flying V, baby. Flying V, baby. I love it. The only team to be based off a movie.
And I'm a Stars fan. I'm still rocking the
dude, their old school logo is so good. It's one of the freshest logos in NHL history, I think.
That's sick.
Sorry for everyone who doesn't agree with it, but I grew up somewhat of a Ducks fan. I'm more of a Kings fan, but I don't hate the Ducks the way I hate the Dodgers when it comes to like rivalry in intertown. Like the Ducks winning doesn't drive me insane because their jerseys, their old school jerseys, the retro ones are so good. And the movie is phenomenal.
Of course.
But let's get into first baseman. First baseman's a weird position. Our rankings are relatively similar. At least for our top 10, they're all in a little different spots, but we do have a relative consensus on, I believe 9 of the 10 are in all of ours, if I'm not mistaken. It might be 8.
Pretty impressive.
But our top 2 are 100% agreed upon. In slightly different order, Landman and Big Bob both have, we're talking Encarnacion Strand and Manzardo 1 and 2. I have that flipped. Encarnacion Strand has now played over 100 bats in baseball. I believe at 130, if I'm not mistaken, is sort of when you switch. So he's probably going to stay up. He's probably going to lose his status here in, I don't know, 4 days, 5, maybe end of the week. Talk to me about Manzardo. I don't know why I'm going Manzardo first. I like Manzardo. I think for me, it also goes back to Tampa Bay knows what they're doing. Manzardo is just a good hitter. So let's talk Manzardo and then we'll talk CES.
Yeah.
So I'll talk Manzardo. I mean, let's talk.
He's your number one. Go ahead.
Right. He's a 21 draft dude. His bases are still affordable. Base autos in 50, where Encarnacion Strand's double that right now. And that's part of the call up love. When I look at Manzardo, I don't know what it is, why I like him so much, but I do. I think he hits the ball well, bat the ball. He got traded to the Guardians, I don't know, a week ago.
Yeah, in the
If I'm not
Savant trade.
mistaken. He has not had the greatest season. I will say he's only batting 230, but overall he's 300 hitter. He's got some good power, relatively speaking. I just like his skill set. I think it's going to translate well. I don't love that he's in the Guardians farm now, but I'm hoping he took a lot out of Tampa Bay that propels him further. Let's hear Landman. Where are you on Lanzardo? And then you could bring up CES.
Yeah, I have Manzardo second. Like you said, it's not the best year. I do think Cleveland has a really good developmental system. They do great with pitchers, but they're pretty sneaky with catchers. And I'm going to let you know about it when we get to shortstops. But
Sure.
he really strikes me as I think the ceiling on him is Yandy Diaz. He's not a big power guy for first base, which isn't really the common way. You put a guy who can't field, can't do much, but hit for power at first. But that's not really the case with Manzardo. He's not a huge guy. He's 6 foot, 205, but the hit is maybe a 70 hit tool. He's got a very patient approach, and he's just a professional hitter.
Yeah. I mean that's why I think I have him number one. I just think my gut is his floor is pretty good.
Yeah.
Where Encarnacion Strand's floor could be lower. And I think that's where I go like safety. I think number one has to sort of be like a safe dude. And I almost we'll talk about him later, but I almost put Nolan number one. A, from an Angel standpoint, but B, bat to ball. I think it just matters. I know we're looking for home runs out of this position. Baseball is changing. When you've got guys like Seager playing shortstop and just mashing the ball, where you look at historically, yeah, we had A-Rod, but we also had Jeter, who wasn't a home run hitter. It was an on-base guy, get the ball moving. You got second basemen, like we don't have many. Alfonso Soriano, I know that brings people way back. He was one of the few home run hitting second basemen. Power positions are usually third, corner outfield, and first. I feel like that's changed. I look at like Jose Abreu did hit a lot of home runs, but he's not known as like a power hitter. He was an on-base dude for the White Sox, was very good. I know he's not playing great for the Astros. I think that's the kind of Manzardo style. I don't think Manzardo is going to get to that 35, I believe 40 range that Abreu was capable of getting to. But I could see him batting, low threes, 20 some odd home runs. And I think his ceiling's really his floor is really high. I think his ceiling is he's my number one, so I'm hoping his ceiling is pretty damn high as well. But let's then talk CES. Bobby, he's your number one. What do you like about him relative to Manzardo? What do you like about him in general? Little tidbit: we talked about him. He batted 250. He's batting 250. He's got 4 home runs, 15 RBIs in baseball and pro ball, and his on base percentage is low. He doesn't take a ton of walks. His on base percentage is only 310. I love OBP. I think we all do. That's my concern with him.
Yeah, I go back and forth on them, like you guys said. Manzardo, it's the hit over power, which is kind of different for a first baseman. I thought last year he was pretty much a sure thing to have a plus hit tool. This year's kind of funky, but I mean, even if you take into this year to consideration, he had a lot going on between injury. He had a lot of personal stuff going on. I still think it's at least plus. The power is probably average, but he's going to play. Like you said, he's a high floor player. Whereas CES is kind of like the opposite to me. I think I'm lower on CES's hit tool than a lot of people are. He did put up good numbers. He was hitting 315 AA, 3 something else in AAA. So a lot of people aren't concerned with the hit tool. But like you were saying, OBP, that walk rate is terrifying. And I've brought it up before, and people will tell you there are unicorns. Every time I get on CES about his plate discipline, people are like, Vlad Sr. didn't walk a lot. Like, I understand there are players who are productive and can hit without seeing pitches, but it doesn't make me feel good. I think that realistically, he's probably like a 35 grade hit tool. That's kind of like where I stand on him. I don't think that his hit tool is going to be as great as it's shown in the minors, but that power is real. I mean, he's got probably maybe plus power. So I think he's
I love when they
the
compare
prototypical
like
first.
that. You're compared to like a Hall of Famer.
Dude, people
like,
tell me that all the time. Every time I say CES doesn't walk, everyone's like, Vlad Sr. didn't walk. I'm like, that's a weird comparison.
Like, you're talking about a Hall of Fame. You're talking about one of the greatest pure, that people I don't think will ever appreciate fully what Vlad was capable of doing as we do a little tangent there.
Right.
It's crazy to me that whenever your argument is, well, Barry Bonds did it or Vladimir Guerrero, like, yeah, a small subset that have elite ability did it, and if that's what you're banking on, then you're going to be wrong more often than you're right, and that's not something I need to listen to right now.
Like we talked about in the last episode, a lot. I know we're big OBP guys. I'm a big OBP guy. So when you see like kind of not only a low walk rate, but a low walk rate and a high strikeout rate, it kind of like signals the alarms. But I was worried about it in high A, and I was worried about it in double A, and I was worried about it in triple A, and he somehow just keeps hitting the ball. So maybe he'll prove me wrong, but I don't feel great about the hit tool, but it's been good enough. And obviously the power is good enough that he keeps me number one.
I know, Landman, you chased him a little bit. For the record, he is about $100 base auto. That's starting to cool off. It was up a little higher, I believe, for a little bit. It was right on his call up because Cincinnati is I never thought I'd say this out loud, is a sexy team right now with McLean and Ellie, and I think Hunter Green just returned. Lodolo's about to come back. I know I'm missing a few. They're young and they're fun, but he's 21 draft, just like Manzardo. He is double the price of Manzardo, though, right now. What do you like about CES? I know we probably hit on it. What are we missing? He is your number one.
Yeah, and it wasn't even really close for me in terms of number one and the rest of the guys. It is a different profile than I normally gravitate towards. Bob nailed it. The 2 words I would use to describe CES are power and aggressive. So I was actually curious about this. The hit tool is not going to be plus. At best, it'll be maybe a little bit below average. He's aggressive. And his walk rates aren't good, but they're not horrible. You'd want to see them better, but it's because he's so aggressive. And he is going to strike out. But every single level in the minor leagues, he has decreased his strikeout rate. Now, the walk rate will fluctuate between 5 and 10, probably more around 6 or 7 on average. And if he can maintain that or maybe a little bit better and keep his strikeouts under, ideally 25% is the most I would want to see, but it may be a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. But if he can keep it in the mid to high 20s with that kind of power and that kind of feel for the zone, I think he's going to play. Now, is he going to be Vlad? No, he's not going to be Vlad, but it's just a really fun profile. I mean, he's hit some pretty exciting home runs already, and I don't think that's going to change. But it's a low floor because of the aggressiveness.
Yeah, I'm with you. The interesting thing, as we continue down to number 3 on both of your lists, you guys have the same top 4 exactly. So I don't know if
Good job, Bob.
I'm not seeing something or no. So number 3 for you guys is Tyler Sodstrom for the Oakland Athletics. He is 20 draft, base auto. You're looking at 30 to 35. Again, I'm only giving everyone base autos. You can do a multiplier when you get to refractor. If you guys, we'll do an episode probably at some point that will specifically just go into Bowman values and their history. So we'll do that later on. But Tyler has been called up. Tyler he has, I believe it's 8. I looked it up earlier, 85 at bats. He just got sent back down, I think yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. He was my top 3 or 4. I dropped him down to 6 about an hour before we went live. I know it's a short 85 at bats. I get it. But the most recent comps for me are going to affect me a lot. He could not see a baseball. I mean, he needed the baseball to be double the size. He was batting 165 with an OBP of 240, 2 home runs, 5 RBIs. Now he is on probably the worst team in baseball. And it's really hard to motivate yourself to just be great there, I think. Why are you guys still so high on him? I do think he still has a high ceiling. But if this is his floor, I don't want to see it anymore.
I'll say for me, I'm a big age guy. Age is a huge factor for him. When you get a lot of these big power hitting first basemen like CES and Ivan Melendez, and I mean there's a ton of Matt Mervis. You go down the line. A lot of them end up being 23-year-old, 24-year-old, call ups. Tyler Soderstrom's 21 years old. He is, he was in 2020 draft. He made it up way before Hassel, way before Veen. He paced all of those other high school bats other than Jordan Walker. But the fact that he has, I think he definitely has plus power at the moment. He might have plus power. He definitely is like on pace to have plus power, and he's still 21 years old. And I think that that's like a huge thing for me. The strikeout rates, if you look in the last 2 years between high A, double A, and triple A, he has like a 26.5% K rate, but his swinging strike percentage is actually only like 12.3. So he strikes out a lot, but he doesn't like swing and miss at a lot of pitches. I don't know if it's like a BABIP thing or what it is with him, but I'm not as concerned with his K rate as I am with a lot of the aggressive guys like CES. I would go out on a limb so much as to say that because of the age, him being 2 full years younger and having less experience at the college level and the minors, I actually think his hit tool could end up being better than Christian Encarnacion Strand with similar plus power. So like you said, you drop him down a little bit because he came up and he didn't look great. But I'm still a believer in him just because of the age and the power.
Yeah, I mean, I also think there's a weird strategy in baseball and sometimes works is give him the taste of the show, small taste, bring him back down. Now you know what pitches are attacking for this guy and let him adjust. Put him, they're in no rush. The A's are in rebuild mode for the next 7 years, I think. So
Right.
Let him adjust. I think in a perfect world for the A's, honestly, I know he's young, is dude starts mashing and they're able to trade him and then, retool because honestly the window for the A's is so far away at this point.
Trade him to the Braves so he can turn into an MVP player.
Trade no one to the Braves. It's just not. We will go over this because we will do a playoff episode for everybody. We will predict the playoffs. I will go on a limb. If the Braves do not win the World Series, it is one of the greatest failures in baseball in a long time.
Easy. Listen,
that roster is insane.
Listen, as someone who lived through the '90s Braves, be
right,
prepared to see them lose in the playoffs.
But let's keep talking about Tyler. Is there something you want to add, Landman, about Tyler before we get to probably one of my favorite prospects we will talk about next?
Not a ton to add. I'm not as bullish on him as Bob, but I did leave him in my top 3, which says a little bit about the position, but also about Soderstrom. He's kind of trending down a little bit. It is kind of curious. His strikeout rates versus his walk. He's not walking a lot, but as Bob said, the swinging strike rate is down. the BABIP is a little below average, so there could be some flukiness there. But it's plus power, and the main thing is he's young. I think you gotta keep having faith in that because of the success he has had at that age, relative to the levels. And the thing too is there's been some injury concerns. I'm kind of getting a little bit of a Will Myers vibe from him, which is not a bad thing if that's who he becomes. But I think it's going to be a little underwhelming in terms of the inconsistencies and the potentially injury problems that may not be just nagging injuries. They may, some guys, they just have their body just doesn't really hold up the way others do, and you can't really explain it. But it's always something there, and I'm a little worried about that. But I think he, just like Will Myers, I think he'll be around. I think he'll adjust. He's young enough, and he's got the talent. So he was an easy keep in the top 3 for me, even though we did have one guy who's charging fast.
So we'll talk quickly. I'm going to tangent that for 1 second. Is we talk about these draft picks like they're supposed to be the next Vladimir Guerreros sometimes. And so when we say Will Myers, I gave a face. So if you watch this on YouTube, you'll see that. But the reality is you got to be happy with that. Even if it's not the next Mike Trout, the next Vladimir Guerrero, the next perennial all-star. Like the reality is there's 5 in a draft if we're lucky. So getting a Will Myers, and we talked a little about last episode, is getting someone that's going to play 10 to 15 years at even just replacement level on some level, but a little above. It's still a win for 9 out of 10 organizations. And so I'm down on him. But if he ends up being Will Myers, it's not a bad thing. It's not a great thing hobby value. Will Myers is not selling his Bowman first autos for very high. But from a organizational standpoint, you got a guy you could slot into first base or DH or whatever it may be at the time, forever, like within reason. But that's where I stand on all these. I think we pump them to be like the next great hype, and then they're not, and we're like, what a failure. But the reality is we have a ton of rounds in baseball, and we can't expect all-stars every year, every draft pick.
Right.
And Tyler's amongst that. I mean, we're going over 10 guys that we think are great. How many of these guys are actually going to make an all-star team at any given point, right? So that brings us to our next guy that is charging. His Bowman first auto is in, what's it called? Is in 23 Bowman. He's a redemption, but he has signed his redemptions, and they've been fulfilled because I have them at PSA right now. Xavier Isaac, Tampa Bay, first baseman. The dude is just fun. He's batting 272 right now and 320 at bats. His OBP is just under 400. And he's bringing that also with 13 home runs and 58 RBIs and 10 stolen bases. I love him. His base redemption is at 75, 80-ish. They were at like 30-ish a month and a half ago. I got an Atomic at $100.
Same.
And I got PSA, and I'm praying because there's a little mark on it. But I got offered 400 before I sent it to PSA. So yeah. Actually, sorry, I packaged it, put it at the door, gave it to my mail person or dropped it off, and then I got the offer after I got home. I still might not have taken it because I'm like, is he going to drop in the time I get the grade back? If it's a 9, the guy still buys it probably. If it's a 10, I'm doubling my money almost. I like Isaac. I think all of his tools are there. I think he's in an organization, again, that I do like. They tend not to keep their prospects for too long, which we talked about last podcast is if they get traded, does it really matter for their value? Ultimately, I think we've discovered it doesn't really matter for most people. It might matter as a Yankee or as a Met, but as a Tampa Bay Ray, I don't think it matters. I think his floor is low. I mean, it's high. I like him a lot. I think we've all invested in him to some degree at this point. And let's hear, Bobby. What do you like about him? He's my third. He's both of your fourths. So he's a consensus top 5, and he's 20.
I mean, you know what my first bullet point is going to be on why I like him. He plays for the Rays. He's in that.
Yep.
He's a Rays prospect. He's an interesting guy because I'm sure Lan was following as a scout, but I remember when they drafted him in the first round and it turned heads. A lot of people thought that was a reach. I remember them getting like a lot of funny looks at taking Xavier Isaac in the first round. So I was like, kind of on him and Bowman because I was like, like if the Rays saw something, I kind of trust it. And they definitely, whatever they saw was right because he looks like he's going to be great. He's got a very rare, he looks like someone who would just be like a giant slugger, but he's actually got like a really good hit tool, like an above average hit tool. He draws a lot of walks. Like I said, he looks like he's going to be one of those. He looks like he would be, like a CES, like, bat 240, hit a bunch of bomb guys, but he's not really. He's like I said, got a great hit tool. And I think he's just, 19. I think he just got called up to high A, so he's on a pretty good path right now. And obviously he looks like a grown man. So, he might not have like above average to plus power now, but there's no reason to think that he's not going to have it because he's a monster.
What made him a hard chase for me was Junior is his A in the same set. So, he was a great second prize.
For sure.
If you didn't get the Rays in the first week of breaks at all, they jumped. After about 10 days, they went from, I think I got them in a case at one point for 185. They're now at 425 in a case, if not higher.
Jeez.
And he was a great secondary. But it made it a hard chase because I don't know who doesn't believe in Junior, but if you weren't chasing Junior Caminero, you could not chase Xavier Isaac unless you went to a pick your player format. Talk to me about Isaac Landman. I know we've talked about him a little before. Every time I post a picture of any of the autos I have, I get a you know where my DMs are, Brett. Tell me about Isaac.
Yeah, you don't want to seem to move those Rays 2023 Bowman guys to me. We're
ever
for what, like 8 on this?
I hit them and then they grade and then some big baller. Shout out to Jeremiah if you're listening. Jeremiah is your biggest competition on these prospects somehow. He finds a way to just wiggle me in and just takes my cards from me.
Yeah, I seem to be going up against him a lot. Either he's listening very closely or he's just got a really good eye, or maybe a little bit of both. But it's getting to the point I may not tell him when next chase is. But Isaac is a fun one. He's a really fun prospect. Bobby nailed it. Looks like it's going to be plus power, but it's a really good feel for the bat and the barrel. I think that's partially to do with the Rays too, in that they don't want him selling out for power. So you're going to take a little off the grade, maybe. Not that it's not there, but in terms of the in-game power, it might not be what you would think it would be. It's still going to be good. It's still going to be plus. But they're really emphasizing not so much an all or nothing approach. And he's apparently taken to it. And he's obviously taken to it if you're looking at the results. But yeah, there was a little bit of buzz that the Rays were in on this guy going into the draft, and you do not see high school first baseman picked anywhere near the first round. So when they take him, especially the Rays, that kind of speaks volumes to what they think and what maybe you should kind of think about the guy, or at least it should perk up your eyes and pay attention a little bit more. My favorite stat about him, though, was in 90 games at low A, he stole 10 bases. I don't know if he steals 10 bases for the rest of his career, but he did it. So maybe there's some.
I threw that stat in at the end there. Like, he also has 10 stolen bases, but that's not what he's going to be doing, guys. He's going to be getting on base and hopefully add a little. His power is good, but hopefully adds a little more. And hopefully he gets traded to the Angels. But actually, I take that back because that's going to lead us into my number 4, Landman's number 5, and Big Bob does not know prospects. Clearly, no. His number 8.
I got to move.
We're talking about the Angels. I got to do it. I need this. I need this as a cathartic moment. But Shanuel Nolan was the Angels' first draft pick. He is the first player we're talking about today that is not in a product yet. He will be, I'm assuming, in the next draft product coming December. This guy's bat-to-ball skills, phenomenal. We talked about not your prototypical first baseman. He's not a power guy. Maybe it's there. Maybe he learns. But This guy's had 73 at-bats in minor league baseball before he got the call-up. Now, in those 73 at-bats, he batted 370, had an OBP of 510. He has now been up for only 20 at-bats in pro baseball, 19 to be exact, and he's batting 370 with an OBP of 540. So over 100 at-bats. All of those numbers are great. I mean, everyone will agree coming out of the draft, into the draft, he was the most MLB-ready bat, period. He showed it quickly. The Angels, for the last, 3 months, have been known to just call guys up for the sake of it. He went from Double-A to the majors. He skipped Triple-A. Neto came up quick and might have actually skipped Triple-A as well. There was no holding back this dude, and I love what I've seen. Yesterday was a horrible day in the Angels organization. Horrible day. But in the doubleheader that took place, Nolan got on base something like 9 times in a doubleheader between walks and hits. He went like 4 for 6, 3 walks. I mean, like, something that I don't care what anyone says. He doesn't look scared. He's not overwhelmed. He's got a weird swing, I will say. Hands are held a little high for my liking, but he's got quick hands. And it works for him. I'm not going to complain. I know people are like, well, I saw this today. A lot of like, you got to move his position. It's a power position. Guys, get over it. This is 2023 baseball. It's a little different. If he's going to bat 320 even, 310, let him play where he needs to play. But I know Landman needs to get in. You had him at 4, so let's hear. Or you had him at 5. Let's hear more about him.
Yeah, I actually had him when we did our rankings a while back. I had him at 7, and then I had to bump him up to 5. And I was trying to find some room to maybe push him up a little bit more. But I think he's a very high floor. We'll see about the ceiling. So there's an interesting thing I checked out because I knew there was something going on there in terms of first baseman and power profiles. Bob probably knows this. This is not a comp, but it's going to maybe make Brett feel a little bit better. Freddie Freeman, in 14, 15 seasons, has hit 30 or more home runs 3 times. And he didn't do it until his about 8th or 9th season the first time.
Yep.
And that's one of the best first basemen for my money of maybe all time. So,
aging like fine wine over there in LA now. It's crazy, actually. People don't realize it, that he's been in baseball for how long, and he might be having this is his best season ever.
Well, and like Land said, I remember him on the Braves, and I remember people knocking him for that same thing. And they were like, oh, he's got gap power, he's got double power, but he's not going to hit more than 20, 25 home runs. And I remember thinking, who cares? Like, his bat-to-ball skills are insane. And Shanuel's...
Yeah, what are we doing? We're playing baseball, guys.
Right.
This is hard.
I mean,
keep making me happy, Landman, because I love where.
So, I mean, it's interesting about the Angels. They recently, in the last several years, have had a very reactionary developmental philosophy, which isn't a bad thing. And I'm sure a lot of it comes from the owner. But in 2021, I think it was, they drafted, every single round they drafted a pitcher because they were having trouble with having pitchers at the major league level. So I think that may be a little too reactionary, but it was, and then in 2022, they drafted Neto, and he was the most college-ready bat. In 2023, they drafted Nolan Shanuel, who we're going to talk about, who was the most college-ready bat. They're really trying to maximize this Ohtani Trout window, maybe finally, but not necessarily something I like to see from the amateur side of things, but, they're hitting on their picks. Neto is already up, and he's doing well. Shanuel
I love that guy.
Shanuel I read that he has 21 minor league games and now 6 major league games. I mean, what is he, the fastest guy to be called up since 1980? I forget what the numbers, but
it's remarkable. I mean, you're looking at Chris Sale came up pretty quick, not as quick. I think Chris Sale was 60 games. There was a few others like in the old school that most of our listeners probably don't know that came up almost instantaneously, but he is one of the fastest call-ups in modern baseball. And I know it's only a few games, but he's looked really comfortable.
I don't know how many games
and I think
I was gonna say I don't know how many games he played off the top of my head, but I remember the last one I remember getting like the extra fast track was Mike Lee.
Yeah,
I remember him. I don't remember how much he played the
it's a
minor
lot
leagues.
of
He
pitchers.
got like
Most of the list that I read when he got called up is pitchers make the move. I mean, the Angels called up Joyce as well, and I think that's where we were leading to a little bit. Angels did it with Joyce. They did it with Bachman. He was a 21 draft, and it wasn't quick, but it wasn't slow either. Angels have been very reactionary. We have had different GMs amongst this time. We've had Perry now for a few years, but we did have, I won't talk, I'm not saying his name on Mike, but he's now the Seattle Mariners GM. I'm very upset with him. We've done the same thing over different GMs, which tells me it's an ownership thing. But I think Neto's success also helped Nolan's. I think Neto playing well, they're like, look, this guy's his bat is ready for baseball. We'll figure out the rest later. The irony is Neto's defense is what was ready for baseball. Neto's bat is still a little behind. His knee kick's a little high. And I'm only talking about Neto because I'm not allowed to talk to him much when we get to shortstops because he is not a prospect anymore, guys. But this might be the other way around. Nolan's bat is ready. He made a pretty big error during the doubleheader that cost us 2 or 3 unearned runs. So his glove might not be there quite yet, but like we'll get there with him. I'm excited. I love having Neto, Ohape back and looking good, who we talked about last week, and Shenwell at first. Like it's a beautiful 3 that I gotta find the good right now because it is so.
And I'll say, you know what I was impressed with was, so I remember I was out and I heard that Shanuel was making his MLB debut, and he's, he just walked off a college field, like how long ago?
Literally,
and
he's in the College World Series.
And I went to turn the Angels game on, and he's batting leadoff in his first MLB game, and I was like, man, the Angels must really like they see
with
something.
Ohtani batting second,
right?
You're not just batting leadoff; you are having the unicorn bat behind you. So get on base,
right?
I love it, and so we will continue on, and we're gonna go with another guy, 23 Bowman, $50 card. I think we're all 3 pretty high on him. I'm more high on him now because he's not on the Astros any longer. It hurt me to invest in Astro cards, but we got Ryan Clifford. I love Clifford. I know you guys like Clifford. Again, high OBP so far in short. A lot of these guys that are newer and they don't have a ton of experience, but OBP just under 400, batting average at 275, 20 home runs and 70 RBIs, basically 68. I like what I see. You guys just take it away. Talk about Ryan Clifford. He got traded to the Mets, so he's now in a sexy organization when it comes to Bowman prices, but his price is slowly going up. I do have one beautiful PSA 10 of his that maybe I'll move this week. But let Bobby tell me about Clifford.
I love Ryan Clifford. He's a very he's a very interesting prospect to me in that in the 2 times that I've watched him, extensively, he's been 2 different players already in his career. And I would like to know Landman's take on this because I'm sure he's watched it too. But when he was an A-ball, I watched him at the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023. And he was, batting 316, like 20% walk rate. But he only had like 2 or 3 home runs in 40-ish games, something like that. He goes up to high A, and in about twice as many games, he hits 16 home runs to that 3. The walk rate drops from 20% to 8%. The K rate stays the same. Batting average drops from the 3s to like 270. So it's like I watched him in A-ball and I'm like, oh, he's a hit above power guy. Maybe he'll grow into the power. And then he gets into high A and I'm like, maybe he's a below average hit guy with plus power. And I think that that's probably the closer profile as he matures to what he is. But I just thought it was interesting that he looked like 2 entirely different players. But I saw the hit tool look really good at times. I saw the power look really good at times. So I'm just going to hope that both of them are really good.
Let's find that synergy, guys.
Yeah, I did a little bit of a deeper dive into him, and I looked into him when 23 Bowman came out because I was looking for sleepers when I kind of fell into the pitfall that we were talking about earlier of the 1A, 1B. The guys I liked the most were all 1B guys. So if I wanted to chase Gabriel Gonzalez, I had to buy in for Laz. If I wanted to chase Carlos Jorge, I had to buy in for Collier. Isaac. Well, I wanted Caminero, but he just got really expensive really quick. But I was looking for other guys, and Clifford, and we've talked about this a lot. But Clifford was, I thought, the best non-Roman Anthony value. But people caught on to Roman Anthony a little quick too.
And the Astros were cheap. What people don't understand in breaks, I don't know, we haven't talked much about breaks in general, but on a case break, the Astros were sub $100.
Way up.
In the first, for I don't know if they still are because I haven't seen, but they were really cheap. And his base auto, going at $50. That's it doesn't sound great, but that is good for that product. And they were going quick. The problem is they were going quick and nobody was raising their prices, which was the most mind-boggling thing to me. And I was part of that. I did not raise their prices, but they were always top 3 off the board.
Yeah, I took a little bit of a break, but anytime I saw the Astros, I jumped in. But it is kind of the tale of two players. Is he selling out for power? Is he trying to be a hitter? And there were those inconsistencies with him as an amateur. He was on, I think, all kinds. Like every year, he was on whatever Olympic or gold medal or World Cup team there was, dating back to when I think he was like 12. But he was always one of those high-profile guys. He was a Vandy commit, which is, I mean, if you don't know about college baseball, Vanderbilt is basically the Yankees in terms of the cream of the crop. And they've been that way for a while now. But the Astros took him in the 11th round. They gave him second-round money. It was a little over $1 million. And it kind of continued. Is he a hit guy? Is he a plus guy? Because he's got the tools for both. So it's something either isn't really clicking for the whole package, and which is fine. He's still, if he's going to be hit over power or power over hit, I mean, he's still going to have one of those hit plus tools, I think. But it's just, what's he going to be? I don't know. If we're talking cards, it's a great value, and now he's with the Mets, which, nothing against the Astros, but people kind of hate the Astros. So if you want value, you're not really going to get. You'll get it with the Astros, but if you want ceiling, you can look and see what one of my favorite players in baseball, Kyle Tucker, sells for, which is shocking. And Jordan Alvarez, it's the same way. But now he's in New York, and those cards go up, so he could still be a good target.
I mean, he was in the Verlander trade.
You could argue he headlined it, but Drew Gilbert, most people like more.
I don't love Gilbert as much as others, and I'm sure we'll talk about him when we get to him. But to me, Clifford was the headliner. Going to the Mets. To others, it was Gilbert, but it is a 1A, 1B situation. But that shows the Mets' value too. As a hobby, he seems undervalued. As a minor leaguer, I don't get the sense that he's that undervalued. When he's a 1-2 in Verlander might be 50 years old basically, but the dude just pitches. He's been great. He's been better than Scherzer. Verlander just found it again, and we're not going to talk about Verlander because he's Verlander and his life is way too good. We're going to keep moving on, and we talked about Mendez, Ivan Mendez. What Hispanic Titanic is that what they call him?
Greatest nickname ever.
One of the greatest. Yeah, I agree. Landman has him at 10. I am as 5, and Bob's got him somewhere else in another stratosphere.
11.
I like his power tool. This is one of those dudes you're going to get me every once in a while that is going to go off everything I've said. His bat-to-ball skill is not amazing, but his pop is. The dude has 30 home runs in 350 at-bats, in I believe he's in Double-A right now. He's been on fire. There's something about him I like. The biggest negative we'll get into is he's old. He's older than he should be in Double-A. But he's a prototypical first baseman. He is the first baseman that everyone knows and thinks about. He's not going to hit 300, but he has 40, 50 home run potential. And I like him. He's with Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. I like him. I think he's just he's a baseball player. He is, to me, he's just, maybe it's the nickname that gets me there, but he's a baseball player. But Adam, you have him also ranked. He was I know you had some issues. He almost fell off. He just hung on to your top 10. Give us a little info on him.
Yeah, originally I had him ranked 6th, and I dropped him when I did my updated rankings. He wasn't really in danger of falling off, even though personally I'm not the biggest fan of him. But I saw him a lot at University of Texas, and he's a really fun guy. The power is easy plus, probably plus plus. So it'll be fun to watch him, but it's a low floor, and there are a few issues personally, and maybe not even personally, that I have with him. One is it's the age. He's a little bit older than you'd like, but he's one of those college COVID guys, so I can kind of give him a pass there. But you got to kind of keep the context when you're looking at the production. But yeah, he has 30 home runs this year between high A and double A, I think. And in 88 games, in 30 games at double A, he's hit 12 home runs. I mean, it's easy plus. But it's a really big issue with the strikeouts is my concern with him, and I'm sure Bob will have the same. That's probably why Bob doesn't even have him on there. Not even age, although it is a factor. Strikeouts, I can see it. Yeah. But it's 33.5% with an 8% walk rate at low or high A, and in the 30 games double A, it's 36% K rate, just under 6% walk rate. And the other thing, and this is kind of the maybe not personally thing, but something I learned pretty quickly in the scouting community, mainly the amateur scouting community, there is a heavy bias against right-handed hitting and right-handed throwing first baseman. And if you look at the track record of the success stories coming out of the draft, it's really bad. So, right or wrong, but you look at that kind of scouting bias. But if you look at the results, it's really bad in terms of the list of successes. So I don't know. The thing I can't shake is I think his ceiling, and as a ceiling, it worries me, is Joey Gallo.
Hey,
And I like
you
Joey
just moved
Gallo
off my top
too,
10.
but...
You went from 5 to unranked. Joey Gallo has more home runs than he does like walks and total like it's ridiculous. But I get where you're coming from. I do see what you're saying. His value is in pop. It's nowhere else. You're not getting anything great. I mean, the right-handed is a concern. He could be a career DH guy down the road, to be honest. I mean, it's just the reality. Or learn the outfield, I guess. I mean, like that's a corner outfielder like waiting to happen. But again, I don't think he's athletic enough for that.
The Joey Gallo comps only stop at the bat. He does not have the athleticism. I mean, Joey Gallo.
That's what I'm saying. He's not that same dude. He's not. No. Yeah, I agree. But then moving on, because we're going to go to someone who is being held back at one of the better organizations right now. I can't believe I'm saying this, but that is Mr. Heston and the Baltimore Orioles. You know, his base auto is in 20 draft, and it's about $100 right now. So he's not cheap. Landman has nothing to do with Heston. He is my number 8. He is Bobby's number 6. Talking about Heston, you know, I'll say this is that there's a surplus in Baltimore right now, and you've got to find a great tipping point of being too young, but not holding anyone back. I think Baltimore's doing a good job actually currently with that. But Heston, I mean, 410 at bats, on base percentage of 380 right now. He's in AAA, so he's playing as close to as he can to the competition. He's batting over 300. 20 home runs isn't amazing, but it's fine. It's not a below average power tool. He's not stealing bases on you at all. Where do you stand with Heston? I know you got some love.
I do, and I'm going to give Lan a free pass because Heston's probably not a first base prospect, but I knew that he wasn't going to make my outfield list, and he does play some first base, and I wanted to talk about him because he is a guy that I like a lot. I don't think it's out of the question that he plays first base, depending on what the Orioles are going to do. You know, they have Mullins in center. They're going to have Kowser coming back up. I think Santander and Hayes are both in arbitration still, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Ryan O'Hearn's playing good at first base, but it's like maybe a flash in the pan. He was never good in Kansas City. Mountcastle doesn't play defense.
But have you seen Mountcastle's home runs recently?
Yeah, I mean,
Jesus,
he's a DH. He's not gonna. So I mean, I think
Mark Trumbo, Chris Davis vibe.
So like, I think there's a chance that if they want to get Heston playing time, that it could be first base, and they do split him a little bit in the minors. He plays a little more right field, but he's just an incredible story. I mean, he's a kid who was the number 2 overall pick behind Torkelson, and he had a heart condition, and he didn't end up playing until 2022. He had to sit out almost 2 full seasons. So the knock against him is obviously that he's old. I think is he already 24? He's at least 23. Yeah, he might be 24. So he is old. The tools are, probably above average hit, above average power. Nothing that's going to blow you away. I don't think he has any plus tools. Moves pretty well for his size, but he's not fast. I just love the story. I love him as a player. I think if they move him to first base, there could be an opening there in Baltimore, and I'd love to see him get a chance because, like I said, you can't beat that story.
I agree. I'm with you. I like Heston. The interesting part for all of us, I'm not even gonna let Landman talk about Heston because we're gonna.
No, you gotta let me talk a little
next
bit.
Guy. Our next guy, we all have number 7. We have these weird rankings from 1 to 6. There's some similar, but number 7 we all agree with Tyler Locklear, Mariners organization, 22 draft, base auto. We're looking at $45. Tell me about him. I hope he stinks as an Angel fan, but I do like him. I actually like a lot of the Mariners guys right now, which is driving me insane emotionally. But let's hear about it, Landman. What do you like about Tyler?
All right. Well, I'm gonna if I bribe you with the Nolan fun stat, can I just say one thing about Heston?
I'll take my head.
At least why he wasn't on my list.
Fine. Yeah. Without Heston, we're good. I don't want to hear any great stats about Tyler.
No, I want to give a shout out to Bob. I did not have Heston at first base. I didn't have Clifford at first base either, so I only added him last second because I didn't even realize he was moved to first base. But the reason I kind of wanted to say something is because as we go throughout these rankings, there will be guys that one of us may move to another position because one, we think they'll play there, and they have played there in the minors, or one or the other. But it's just a way we can talk about guys that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise, or spread it out, like on a deep position, like when we get to shortstops. I've moved guys to second and third base because I saw a path for them there, and that way we get to talk about more guys, and y'all get to hear about more guys.
Yeah, 100%. It's a great point because we don't want our number 10 to be some bum, and so we want to get you guys all the info that we possibly can. So let's hear this Heston fact.
No, it's a Shanuel fact.
Ooh, Shanuel.
I'm bribing you. I know my audience. In his 6 major league games, he has as many hits as he does walks. 7 hits, 7 singles, 2 strikeouts.
2 strikeouts. I love that.
Yeah.
And people don't value. I mean, I know the game has changed over time. We've talked about it a little bit. People don't value the walk anymore. They value the home run, but these are the guys that set the table. I know it's the cheesiest line in baseball, but these are our table setters. You can't just hit solo home runs and win a game. I mean, I go back to the Angels. I look at Ohtani versus Acuna. Ohtani has hit 43 home runs at this point. I think he has. I've heard the runs amount, but he has hit himself in. Yeah, sorry. He has hit himself at 44.
He hit another one yesterday.
That's right, 44. He has hit himself in for like 80% of his runs. You look at Acuna, who a lot less home runs, but he's getting on, and yes, he has better hitters behind him, but he's setting that table over there, in Braves country. It's just the reality of it. That's why he gets stolen bases, and like people are forgetting that. He's a great hitter. I mean, both of them are, but you need someone to set the table, and that's sort of what Heston does.
Yeah, he was the 2nd overall pick. It's a very funky swing. I was never really a big fan of him at Arkansas. They signed him so they could spread the bonus pool out, but he's kind of making me a believer this year. And yes, Bob covered it all. There's really nothing to add in terms of the age, the odd injury history, one with the heart, and then he's had some other issues. but he's really having a great season, and I think they're going to have to find a way to get him in there some way because it's.
I agree.
He's making me a believer.
I think he's just stopped right now because Baltimore is just prospect production town right now, and I think they're like, oh, let's not just empty our minor league system, and so they're playing that game of like, the Reds sort of did it. They brought up a lot of young. I mean, the Reds got to be one of the youngest teams in baseball right now, but Baltimore's winning.
Baltimore, well, that's the difference.
Baltimore is the best
between the Reds and Orioles.
Right.
And the Reds are winning, but the Orioles have more of a foundation in place. Whereas the Reds, these guys came up and they just gave them that jolt, that spark that they needed to kickstart things.
I could see Baltimore winning a World Series this year. I can't see the Reds doing it. Obviously, like it's that simple to me. I just think I think the Baltimore has the team makeup to make a run. Again, if the Braves don't win at all, it's the biggest. Or no,
make it easy.
I think that's the difference between the two organizations right now, and that has to do with like they also have older guys that are just working. They ripped off the Angels in a trade to get Bradish, who's just been phenomenal. And the Angels, I don't know if you know that. That's how Baltimore got him. Let's not talk about Dylan Bundy anymore in my life. So yes, I think he's a great hitter. I think Heston deserves a shot. I think he will get that shot. It's just a matter of when. And Baltimore shouldn't make that many more changes because they're just doing really well right now. So now we get to Tyler. I know we got some.
Oh, that's right. We were talking about Tyler Locklear, weren't we?
Mommy, I don't know if you're listening. Sam, I know you're listening. These are Mariner fans that I love to love, but hate that I love them. Let's talk about Tyler. Let's talk about this. He's 22 drafts. His photo looks like he's 14 years old, by the way. I don't know what it is about him. His photo, him and Cole Young look like they just finished their bar mitzvahs.
Well, and Locklear's not that young.
He's not. He's not an 18-year-old dude. He just looks to me.
That's why I've got this great beard. Otherwise, I'd get still to this day get card.
Hey, you're watching on YouTube. I'm throwing a picture of Locklear's card at this moment. I'm going to add some fun graphics next this week.
Tyler Locklear's really fun. I mean, he's having a great year. And it's really unfortunate, too, because he got hit by a pitch and lost about 2 months to a broken hand. But I think he's got, is it a 161 WRC plus? Is that right, Bob?
Yep.
He's got 12 homers, 10 stolen bases, 305 average, 422 OBP, 549 slugging. I mean, it's a great year he's having, and I think it's legit. I mean, the stolen bases he's not really a fast guy, but that's one of those things you're seeing some sneaky. It's more about not so much speed as it is awareness, which is it maybe won't translate, but I love to see that trait in that knowing when to take advantage, because that's not just that's just a baseball player. So I love to see that, but it's plus power.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's probably an above average hit tool with plus power, which is, not a combination you see a ton of. I chased him a little bit when 2022 draft came out. He, to me, like you said, the shame that he, with the broken hand or wrist or whatever it was, he'd probably be in Double-A right now, the way that he's hitting high A pitching. I mean, that slowed him down. That hurts. But when this product came out, he kind of reminded me of the same way that I felt about Kyle Manzardo when 21 draft came out. He's just a college bat that, because he's so advanced, he's going to move quickly. The hit tool is not as good as Manzardo's, but I think the power is better than Manzardo. So you kind of like lose one, get the other. But just a guy that, he's easy to root for. He's got,
and he was a double chase. It was him and Cole Young. Right. I believe was their third. I feel like they had one other guy that wasn't, because Gonzalez is 23 Bowman
in the draft. Because Locklear was what, third round? Cole Young was 1, so they must have had someone 2. I can't remember.
There's one other.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Is that where they had Prelander, or is that 23 Bowman?
Prelander's 23. So they had a lot of guys in 20. Walter Ford. Ford's your other guy.
That's the one.
Ford, and some people love Ford. I know Shelly. I don't know if you're listening, but shout out. She's got, I believe, almost the rainbow. I know I helped connect her to get 2 of those pieces. lower numbered, but people love Florida. Dude just throws. But we'll talk. Maybe we'll talk about him. We've changed up our pitching rankings, so we're gonna try to get you guys a little more pitchers. Sorry, I guess, and a little more outfielders in the coming weeks. But we're dwindling down, and we're gonna talk about a guy that only Big Bob has now. Blaze, who is sitting in 21 draft at $65 base auto. You can probably get color, damn near 100 at this point. Refractors, my guess. He was big. I mean, he's in a sexy city. Boston fans travel well. Great name, Blaze Jordan. I mean, let's just go off that. That's a number one prospect name. Tell me about Blaze. He just doesn't do it for me. That's why he is on my honorable mention, quote unquote. And I know Landman has talked about him a little before, and I know some people that still chase him like crazy. But what do you like about Blaze? Why is he not higher?
So I have to keep Blaze on my list out of respect. I like to be right about products, but I also like to take accountability when I'm wrong. I've never been more wrong about a prospect as I was about Blaze Jordan. When 2021 Bowman came out, it blew my mind that people were chasing his cards. I thought he was like the most guaranteed flop of a prospect. As soon as I saw the YouTube videos of him hitting home runs as a teenager, I was like, man, this guy's going to be terrible. Like, there was no doubt in my mind. I was like, he's going to be 40% K rate. What he's done so far, the fact that he's a average to above average hit tool right now. I mean, he's in Double A. He's still 20 years old. He's not off to the greatest start in Double A, but I think he's still batting like 250. But again, he's 20 years old. I just got to give him props. I thought he had bust written all over him. And, you know, when 2021 Bowman came out, a lot of people, he was one of the big chases. And I thought that
he's still
I thought that, you know, Kobe Mayo was the same class. I think he was like 15 picks after him, and he was like a quarter of the price. And I was, you know, yelling like, why are you buying Blaze Jordan when you can buy Kobe Mayo? Blaze Jordan's going to be terrible. And he hasn't been terrible. So I keep him in my top 10 as a little like shout out. I like to admit when I'm wrong. But no, he's been a great player so far. I think he's got average to above average hit tool. I think the power is not plus yet, but it could be. I mean, we saw the home runs when he was 13.
He got time. But yeah, I mean, I don't dislike him. I'm just not there with him yet. He feels older too for some reason in my head.
I was surprised he's 20.
He is.
Right? I mean, 21, we're talking 21 Bowman, 21 draft, $65. I mean, like, you're talking about a dude like Manzardo who feels much older, CES, like 20 is young. But that brings us over to another 21 draft. Landman's number 8 as we dwindle down here in Bryce Eldridge. Wasn't even really on my radar, to be honest. So tell the people. I know we've got some fans, and you seem to be one because he's not even your number 10.
Yeah, it's, you know, I had Blaze originally on my top 10, and when I last second added Clifford, I had to bump someone off, and Blaze was the one. It was this struggles at Double A, and then really I just wanted to put Clifford on. So it was him or Melendez or one other guy that we'll probably talk about last briefly. But Eldridge, I couldn't move. I thought about it, I couldn't do it. He's such a fun prospect.
Yeah.
He's a little bit older for a high school draft pick. He's 18 years old, almost 19. He's a two-way player. For those who don't know, he's a legitimate pitching prospect. Also, has 3 pitches: fastballs, sliders, and potentially a changeup that could be okay. And he can throw it up to 95, 96. And you couple that with some of maybe the best power in the draft. I mean, I think it might be 70 power. It could be plus, but in 16 games of the complex, he's already hit 5 home runs. He's 6'7", so he's a huge guy, but it's going to be a little bit of length in the swing. He's going to strike out, but I think he's got the potential for a really nice approach at the plate. He's walking, and again, it's a small sample size, but just a guy who's got that kind of tools, that kind of size. I mean, this might be, in terms of athleticism, the Joey Gallo type. Maybe not to that level, because I think he's in the outfield now. He's probably more of a first baseman. I don't know how much of that was because they wanted to preserve the arm, because he was pitching a lot too. But they're just very loud tools. So with that kind of power, both in the arm and the bat, it's just really exciting to see how that's going to play out.
Yeah, I agree. Let's go with our last guy. He's in year 9, both of our 10s. Bobby, tell us about Ortiz. He's not in any product yet, gentlemen and ladies, but
So I had to throw Ortiz on this list for one reason. Was when he first started coming on the radar a few weeks ago. I looked him up because I wanted to know where he came from, and I actually found out that he played baseball at Florida Southwestern College, which is a community college in the city that I live in that I didn't know had a baseball team. Um, so you
the
talk.
more you know. There we go. The star going across the
I
screen,
thought
guys.
Chris Sale was like the pride of Fort Myers, Florida, but Abimelech Ortiz is coming for that spot. But no, he's a guy, the prototypical power hitting first baseman. I like him more than, he kind of fell in that same range as like Melendez for me. Melendez fell off my list. I think his hit tool is a little better than Melendez, and the power is just as good. He's not going to move very well. He's, I don't know what that speed grade is going to be. It's not going to be much above 25, 20, 30. He draws walks well. I think he was like over 10% in A ball. And he's also not that old, considering I think he came out of the Carlos Beltran school in Puerto Rico, and then went to a year at Florida Southwestern College. He's still only 21 years old, and he's up through high A. So Melendez, you kind of worry about that being 23 and that age catching up. But Ortiz is still young. I think the hit tool is better than Melendez. It's probably average if I'm being generous. But the power, it looks like it's got to be plus. Land might think it's plus plus, but I mean, he's got 22 home runs in 66 games in high A this year.
Yeah.
I mean, he mashes. So I had to keep him on here to give him a little shout out.
I think we all like the same thing about him at the end of the day.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He's a pop-up guy. And I mean, he's in the Rangers organization, which is in my backyard. And he kind of snuck up on me. I'm not going to lie. I took a little bit of notice of him earlier in the year and was a little skeptical, but it's continued. He's a big boy. I've heard Ortiz. And just in terms of the body type, we're not talking about comps just yet. But
he's a Hall of Famer, guys. Buy away when you can.
It's a DH profile. The analytics look good though. He's very aggressive at the plate. But he shows, when I talk about good control of the zone and the bat path, it's can he move? Can he hit high low? So can he adjust to the breaking stuff? Can he hit with loft? Can he chase the high fastball and drive it with authority? And he really can do all that. And he generates some serious loft. I mean, he has hit some moonshots. So it's aggressive. I'm not saying he's a patient guy, but he's gonna strike out. But he can hit high low. So he really controls the bat, which is something that he's really promising to see.
So that's our top 10. There is an honorable mention that we will get into. I want to hear everyone's top 10, and then we'll end on our honorable mention. I'm going to start today. My number 1 is Manzardo. My number 2 is Encarnacio Strand. My number 3 is Xavier Isaac. My number 4, who is now hopefully not going to be a prospect anymore, is Shanuel. My number 5 is Melendez. My number 6 is Soderstrom. My number 7 is Locklear. My number 8 is Heston. My number 9 is Clifford. And 10, we just spoke about Ortiz. Those are my top 10. There's a few honorable mentions that we'll go into very, very, very shortly and very briefly. But Landman, let me hear your top 10. I know you got CES on top, but let's hear them all. Give the people what they want.
Yeah. Number 1 is Christian Encarnacion Strand. Number 2 is Kyle Manzardo. Number 3 is Tyler Soderstrom. Number 4 is Xavier Isaac. 5 is Nolan Shanuel. 6, Ryan Clifford. 7 is Tyler Locklear. 8 is Bryce Eldridge. 9 is Abby Ortiz. And 10 is Ivan Melendez. And Heston is only there because I didn't have it first. But I love that we got
no cheat going on. We I did it last week with Ohape, and one of their Gedger. I saw Bob put it in. I was like, I'm putting Heston. I like him. But Bob, then let's hear your top 10 with your cheat codes.
My 4 actually start same as Land's. Encarnacion Strand 1, Manzardo 2, Soderstrom 3, and Isaac 4. I think we're right in line there. Then I have number 5, Ryan Clifford. Number 6 is where I put Heston in there. Number 7, Tyler Locklear. Number 8, Nolan Shanuel, who I probably need to move up, huh? Number 9, Blaze Jordan. And number 10 is Abby Ortiz.
And so when we were making our rankings, the one thing that all three of us agreed on is one of us has to leave this one guy in our top 10. And it was more of a talking point. I don't know if any of us really believed he was our top 10. But he was, according to big prospectors, one of the top chases in 23 Bowman. Bobby will talk about it briefly. Did not understand that. Did not put him as a top chaser. We're talking Matt Mervis. He has now had major league experience with the Chicago Cubbies. He has been sent down. He has not played great. But tell me about Mervis. Take your moment of all the haters yelling at you that Mervis is a top chase, if not top 5, where I think everyone would agree now he's not even a top 10 chase in that product.
Yeah. He Mash Mervis. That was what everyone kept yelling at me. The thing about Mervis is, I took my licks on Blaze Jordan. Like I said, I like to admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong on Blaze Jordan. But I also will take some credit when I'm right. I made a chase rankings for 2023 Bowman, and he was not, I don't think he was in my top 20. And pretty much every comment of feedback I got was telling me how insane I was, because there was actually, I saw people before it came out who had him as the number 1 chase. We're talking ahead of Drew Jones, ahead of, Junior Caminero. And people were all in on Matt Mervis. I pulled, what's funny is after I talked about how he wasn't a top 20 chase, I pulled his refractor auto out of the first box that I bought. I've never sold a card faster. I'm
the idiot that bought a speckle auto of his, by the way.
I sold a refractor auto in release week for, I think, $300. And I think what his base auto's got to be down to like $20-$30. So yeah, I don't think he's going to be anything more than, occasional pop. I don't think the pop's even that crazy. He might have plus raw power, but I think that the hit tool is probably like 35, like max. I just don't think he's that good. I think he's the, people always talk about quad A players. They talk about, Kellenic and Joe Adell being quad A players. Matt Mervis is a quad A player. I don't think he ever was going to be a good major leaguer. And I think people kind of got wrapped up in those minor league stats when they were chasing him in 23 Bowman.
I agree. I'm disappointed in Mervis. I bought into the hype really briefly and got a speckle auto, and it's sitting at PSA for the last 3 months, and I've spent $15 and it's losing probably 50% value while it's there. So that's a hold, and hopefully he figures it out. Did we miss anyone? Anyone want to make a mention? Next week we will be doing second basemans. So we're sort of, I'll give it a little hit. We're a little all over the place on second basemans. I believe one player on this list is already in the pros. We're talking Zach, and Zach is getting an auto in 23 Bowman Chrome. He's one of the weird guys who had color in 23 Bowman. They are going to insert his auto into 23 Bowman Chrome. That's what they did with Churio. I'm not saying he's Churio, guys, but he has been playing really well at the major league level. And we're 21 days out, I believe it is, from Bowman Chrome. So usually that means we're about a week away from the checklist. Let's hope. We will do a checklist episode for everybody. We will try to figure out each of our top 10-ish chases and try to help you guys out before breaks drop. But anyone else you guys want to give a shout out to? First basemans, this is your time. I think we've gone over everybody that we care about, but I feel like Landman has nobody that he's just heavily invested in at first base.
Well, first base, and these rankings all need to be taken with a grain of salt, because it's, at the end of the day, rankings are fun. They're very fluid. As we updated it before we went on this podcast, and there was guys that even fell off. And there are guys that we didn't talk about. Like I would have for sure had a guy we talked about last episode, Samuel Basallo, again with the Orioles, but we've already talked about him, so it doesn't really benefit the listeners to hear about him in the next episode. So when somebody's covered really well, or they may be covered really well down the line, I don't think we'll try and make it as efficient of a podcast as possible, so you can hear about as many guys as you want to hear about. Hopefully,
Yep.
And Basalo is a point that I didn't make last week. We talked about when we finished recording, and I think we're going to try to get an episode more about prospects and changes. Is does a prospect changing their position matter? We talked about catchers not getting hobby love. If Basalo moves to first base full time and mashes, what does that do to value? We're not going to answer that question for you today. This is a reason for you to keep listening, but we will talk about that kind of stuff. We'll look more into the trading, all of it, but think about it, because there are a lot of those catchers specifically. It's probably one of the most moved positions because it does take a lot out of the body. It's such an important position that 10 of the guys that we talked about, half of them might not make it to the pros as a catcher. And does that change their value? We're going to look into it. We'll give you that information. Next week, we're coming at you, with second basemen. Hopefully, we'll have some Bowman Chrome info. And then we're going to get to sexy position and shortstop a week after that. We're dropping this one Tuesday, but Bobby's got something on his mind.
I just want to say I'll throw in my honorable mention. Before I decided that Ryan Clifford was a first baseman and put him on my list, my number 10 was actually Nathan Martorella of the Padres. I'll throw him as my honorable mention. He's a sneaky kind of Bowman chase. He's really cheap. And also, I forgot I could throw in a jab that the reason I put Blaze Jordan as a first baseman is because I think that their long-term third baseman is Marcelo Mayer, but we'll get into that in a couple episodes.
I mean, it's not Devers. He's a defensive black hole, guys. Come on. Everything that comes into him, he spits out just the wrong direction. No, I love Boston fans. We appreciate you guys listening. Keep tuning in. We'll be back next week, hopefully with some new checklist stuff. Peace.